All right, we got a real Johnson love fest for today. We went to the drawing room where it was a considerable increase of company. Several of us got round Dr. Johnson and complained that he would not give us an exact catalog of his works. There might be a complete edition. He smiled and evaded our entreaties. Then he intended to do it, I have no doubt, because I have heard him say so, and I have in my possession an imperfect list, fairly written out, which he entitles Historia Studiorum. I once got from one of his friends, says here Percy, a list which there was pretty good reason to suppose was accurate, for it was written down in his presence by this friend, who enumerated each article aloud and had some of them mentioned to him by Mr. Levitt, in concert with him whom it was made out. And Johnson, who heard all this, did not contradict it. But when I showed a copy of this list to him and mentioned the evidence for its exactness, he laughed and said, I was willing to let them go on and they pleased, and never interfered. Upon which I read it to him, article by article, and got him positively to own or refuse. And then, having obtained certainty so far, I got some other articles confirmed by him directly, and afterwards, from time to time, made additions under his sanction. His friend Edward Cave having been mentioned, Johnson told us, Cave used to sell 10,000 of the Gentleman's Magazine, yet such was then his minute attention and anxiety that the sale should not suffer the smallest decrease, that he would name a particular person who he heard had talked of leaving off the magazine and would say, let us have something good next month. Oops, I wasn't paying attention. I was just reading there. I wasn't paying attention to what they were saying. Let me read this again. Okay. It was observed that avarice was inherent in some dispositions. Johnson said, no man was born a miser because no man was born to possession. Every man is born covetous, desirous of getting, but not avarice, desirous of keeping. I said, I have heard old Mr. Sheridan maintain with much ingenuity that a complete miser is a happy man, a miser who gives himself wholly to the one passion of saving. Johnson said, that is flying in the face of all the world who have called an avarice man a miser because he is miserable. No, sir, a man who both spends and saves money is the happiest man because he has both enjoyments. The conversation having turned on bon mots, he quoted from one of the Anna, an exquisite instance of flattery in a maid of honor in France, who, being asked by the queen what o'clock it was, answered, what your majesty pleases. He admitted that Mr. Burke's classical pun upon Mr. Wilkes being carried on the shoulder of the mob, blank numerasque furter lege solutus. This means as he pours along in lawless rhythms from Horace, was admirable, and though he was strangely unwilling to allow to that extraordinary man the talent of wit, he also laughed with approbation at another of his playful conceits, which was that Horace has in one line given a description of a good, desirable manner. Est modus in ruibus sunt certae denique finis. That is to say, modus as to the tastes in certain fines. That translates as, there is measure in everything, there are fixed limits. So that is to say, a modus as to the tits in certain fines. I screwed up that joke, but it wasn't very funny anyway. Anyway, there's a footnote here about why he doesn't particularly like this guy. See this quotation fully investigated in the notes upon my Journal of the Tour of the Hebrides, available now at Amazon and where other books are sold. 3rd edition, page 21. And there, as a lawyer mindful of the maxim sum cuque tributio, I cannot forbear to mention that the additional note beginning with I find since this former edition is not mine, but was obligingly furnished by Mr. Malone, who was so kind as to superintend the press while I was in Scotland, and the first part of the second edition was printing. He would not allow me to describe it to its proper author, but as it is exquisitely acute and elegant, I take this opportunity, without his knowledge, to do him justice. So there's a real deep cut now to something from Tour of the Hebrides. Trying to get you to read that, I guess. All right, anyway. Johnson observed, a man cannot with a propriety speak of himself except he relates simple facts. As I was at Richmond, or what depends on mensuration, as I am 6 feet high. He is sure he has been at Richmond. He is sure he is 6 feet high, but he cannot be sure he is wise, or that he has any other excellence. Then all censure of a man's self is oblique praise. It is in order to show how much he can spare. It has all the invidiousness of self-praise and all the reproach of falsehood. I said at this point, sometimes it may proceed from a man's strong conscientiousness of his faults being observed. He knows that others would throw him down, and therefore he had better lie down softly of his own accord. I thought that was pretty good. On Tuesday, April 28th, Johnson was engaged to dine at General Paoli's, where, as I have already observed, I was still entertained in elegant hospitality, and with all the ease and comfort of a home. I called on him and accompanied him in a hackney coach. We stopped first at the bottom of Hedge Lane, into which he went to leave a letter with good news for a poor man. It says here this poor man was Martius Lowe, in distress, as he told me. I did not question him particularly as to this. He himself often resembled Lady Bolingbroke's lively description of Pope, that he was an un politique och choc it och reves. And we don't get a translation of the French, I guess. He would say, I dined today in Grosvenor Square. This might be with a duke, or perhaps, I dined today at the other end of town, or a gentleman of great eminence called on me yesterday. He loved thus to keep things floating in conjecture. Omne ignotum pro magnifico est. And we do get a translation of this. The unknown always passes for something peculiarly grand. That's from Tacitus's Agricola. It's true. I believe I ventured to dissipate the cloud, to unveil the mystery, more freely and frequently than any of his friends. We stopped again at Worgman's, the well-made toy shop in St. James Street, at the corner of St. James's Place, to which he had been directed, but not clearly, for he searched about some time and could not find it at first, and said, to direct one only to a corner shop is toying with one. That's a bad pun. I suppose he meant this as a play upon the word toy. It was the first time that I know him to stoop to such sport. After he had been some time in the shop, he sent for me to come out of the couch and help him to choose a pair of silver buckles, as those he had were too small. Well, this is great. This is like a what do you call it? Changing montage with Johnson. Just cue the 80s music. Probably this alteration in dress had been suggested by Mrs. Thrale, by associating with whom his external appearance was much improved. He got better clothes, and the dark color from which he never deviated was enlivened by metal buttons. His wigs, too, were much better, and during their travels in France, he was furnished with a Paris-made wig of handsome construction. This choosing of silver buckles was a negotiation. Sir, said he, I will not have the ridiculous large ones now in fashion, and I will give no more than a guinea for a pair. Such were the principles of the business, and after some examination, he was fitted. As we drove along, I found him in a talking humor of which I availed myself. I said, I was this morning in Ridley's shop, sir, and was told that the collection called Johnsoniana, Johnsomania, basically, Johnsoniana, Soniana. For some reason, I'm having a tough time pronouncing that today. Johnsoniana has sold very much, Johnson said. Yet the Journey to the Hebrides has not had a great sale. Oh, there's a footnote here from Boswell for that, but we'll continue for a second. I said, that is strange. And Johnson said, yes, sir, for in that book I have told the world a great deal that they did not know before. Anyway, the footnote is, here he either was mistaken or had a different notion of an extensive sale from what is generally entertained. For the fact is that 4,000 copies of that excellent work were sold very quickly. A new edition has been printed since his death, besides that in the collection of his works. Anyway, I said, I drank chocolate, sir, this morning with Mr. Eld, and to my no small surprise, found him to be a Staffordshire Whig, a being which I did not believe had existed. Johnson said, sir, there are rascals in all countries. I said, Eld said a Tory was a creature generated between a nunjuring parson and one's grandmother. Ooh, Johnson said, and I have always said the first Whig was the devil. I said, he certainly was, sir. The devil was impatient of subordination. He was the first who resisted power. Better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven, to quote Paradise Lost. At General Pioli's were Sir Joshua Reynolds, Mr. Langton, Marchese Gerardi of Lombardy, and Mr. John Spottiswoode, the younger of Spottiswoode, the solicitor. In the phraseology of Scotland, I should have said Mr. John Spottiswoode the younger of that ilk. Johnson knew that sense of the word very well, and had thus explained it in his dictionary Vox ilk. It also signifies the same, as Mackintosh of that ilk denotes a gentleman whose surname and the title of his estate are the same. Anyway, at this time, fears of an invasion were circulated. I wonder who's invading them at this point. France, maybe? I don't know. To obviate, or Germany? I don't know. Who were they fighting? I mean, they were fighting America, but to obviate which, Mr. Spottiswoode observed that Mr. Fraser, the engineer, who had lately come from Dunkirk, said, that the French had the same fears of us. Johnson said, it is thus that mutual cowardice keeps us in peace. Were one half of mankind brave and one half cowards, the brave would be always beating the cowards. Were all brave, they would lead a very uneasy life. All would be continually fighting, but being all cowards, we go on very well. We talked of drinking wine, Johnson said. I require wine only when I am alone. I have then often wished for it and often taken it. Spottiswoode said, what, by way of a companion, sir? Johnson said, to get rid of myself, to send myself away. Wine gives great pleasure, and every pleasure is of itself a good. It is a good, unless counterbalanced by evil. A man may have a strong reason not to drink wine, and that may be greater than the pleasure. Wine makes a man better pleased with himself. I do not say that it makes him more pleasing to others. Sometimes it does. But the danger is that while a man grows better pleased with himself, he may be growing less pleasing to others. There's a side here from Johnson in a footnote. It is observed in Waller's life in the Biographia Britannica that he drank only water, and that while he sat in company who were drinking wine, he had the dexterity to accommodate his discourse in the pitch of theirs as it's. If an excess in drinking he meant, the remark is acutely just. But surely a moderate use of wine gives a gaiety of spirits which water drinkers know not. Anyway, Johnson is still talking here. Wine gives a man nothing. It neither gives him knowledge nor wit. It only animates a man and enables him to bring out what a dread of the company has repressed. It only puts in motion what has been locked up in frost. But this may be good, or it may be bad, Spottiswoode said. So, sir, wine is a key which opens a box, but this box may be either full or empty. Johnson said, I like that, but Johnson doesn't like that. He says, nay, sir, conversation is the key. Wine is a picklock, which forces open the box and injures it. Okay. A man should cultivate his mind so as to have that confidence and readiness without wine, which wine gives. Fair enough. I said, the great difficulty of resisting wine is from benevolence. For instance, a good worthy man asks you to taste his wine, which he has had 20 years in his cellar. Johnson said, sir, all this notion about benevolence arises from a man's imagining himself to be of more importance to others than he really is. They don't care a farthing whether he drinks wine or not. Sir Joshua Reynolds said, yes, they do for the time. Johnson said, for the time. If they care this minute, they forget it the next. And as for the good, worthy man, how do you know he is good and worthy? No good and worthy man will insist upon another man's drinking wine. As to the wine 20 years in the cellar, of 10 men, 3 say this merely because they must say something. 3 are telling a lie when they say that they have had that wine 20 years. 3 would rather save the wine. 1 perhaps cares. I allow it is something to please one's company, and people are always pleased with those who partake pleasure with them. But after a man has brought himself to relinquish the great personal pleasure which arises from drinking wine, any other consideration is a trifle. To please others by drinking wine is something only if there be nothing against it. I should, however, be sorry to offend worthy men. Cursed be the verse, how well soe'er it flow, that tends to make one worthy man my foe. Quote Pope's epistles to Arbuthnot. I like how Johnson here is talking about wine snobs in a dismissive manner. I said at this point, this is Boswell, I, not me, I. Cursed be the spring, the water. Johnson said, but let us consider what a sad thing it would be if we were obliged to drink or do anything else that may happen to be agreeable to the company where we are. Langton said, by the same rule, you must join with a gang of cutpurses. Johnson said, yes, sir, but yet we must do justice to wine. We must allow it to power it possesses. We must allow it the power it possesses. To make a man pleased with himself, let me tell you, is doing a very great thing. Si patria valens, si nobis vivere care. If we would make our life of value to our country and to ourselves. From Horace's epistles. I was at this time myself a water drinker upon, this is Boswell speaking now. I was at this time myself a water drinker upon trial by Johnson's recommendation. Johnson said, Boswell is a bolder combatant than Sir Joshua. He argues for wine without the help of wine, but Sir Joshua with it. Sir Joshua Reynolds said, but to please one's company is a strong motive. Johnson, who, from drinking only water, supposed everybody who drank wine to be elevated, which he thinks everybody's drunk, said, I won't argue any more with you, sir. You are too far gone. That's funny. Sir Joshua, he's like, whoa, man, you're drunk, man. Okay. Sir Joshua said, I should have thought so indeed, sir, had I made such a speech as you have now done. Ooh. Johnson, drawing himself in, and I really thought blushing, said, nay, don't be angry. I did not mean to offend you. Sir Joshua said, at first, the taste of wine was disagreeable to me, but I brought myself to drink it, and I might be like other people, The pleasure of drinking wine is so connected with pleasing your company that altogether there is something of social goodness in it. Johnson said, sir, that is only saying the same thing over again. Sir Joshua, no, this is new. Johnson said, it does sound like he's a little drunk. Johnson said, you put it in new words, but it is an old thought. This is one of the disadvantages of wine. It makes a man mistake words for thoughts. I said, I think it is a new thought. At least it is a new attitude. Johnson said, nay, sir, it is only in a new coat, or an old coat with a new facing. Then, laughing heartily, ha ha ha! It is the old dog in a new doublet. An extraordinary instance, however, may occur where a man's patron will do nothing for him unless he will drink. There may be a good reason for drinking. All right. Well, I'm not drinking tonight. Or maybe I will now. I kind of want some wine now. Anyway, till next time, bye from Boswell. Cheers.